As soon as I walked through the door, cradling my newborn daughter in my arms, my husband met me with a cold stare and a sharp command. Welcome back. Divorce me. The papers are inside. I froze, unable to process his words. My heart pounded as I clutched my daughter closer to my chest. What do you mean, divorce? My voice trembled as I reached for his arm, demanding an explanation. I do not understand. You need to explain this to me. There is nothing to explain, he said flatly. I just do not love you anymore. The weight of his words crushed me. Had I been the only one looking forward to the birth of our child? The only one excited about the future we were supposed to have as a family? Before I could say another word, he grabbed his packed suitcase and walked out, never even glancing at his daughter's face. My name is Nora. I am 35 years old, a housewife. I have always been a timid person, easily swept along by stronger personalities. That was why I fell for my husband in the first place. His confidence, his decisiveness. He made the choices, and I followed. When I found out I was pregnant, we rushed into marriage. I thought that was the start of our life together. But now, standing in the doorway with my tiny daughter in my arms, it felt like the end. She weighed just 6 pounds, so small, so fragile. My little angel. I had sent my husband a picture of her the moment she was born. I had even called him, eager to share the joy. But his response? What is this? She is not even cute. She looks like a monkey. I could barely comprehend what I was hearing. What are you talking about? I asked, gripping the phone. She is your daughter. But he had already stopped answering my calls. No matter how many times I dialed, he refused to pick up. Looking back, I realized the signs had always been there. Even when I was pregnant, he had never shown much interest in the baby. He had never placed his hand on my belly or talked to her the way other fathers did. At the time, I had been too overwhelmed with morning sickness to dwell on it, too exhausted to question his growing indifference. After I gave birth, he never once visited me in the hospital. But I had kept telling myself he would change once he saw our daughter in person. I repeated those words like a prayer, convincing myself that the moment he laid eyes on her, everything would be different. But my prayers were never answered. Instead, he abandoned us both. I had no parents to turn to. My only remaining family was my in-laws. My father-in-law was a quiet man, always kind to me. But my mother-in-law? She had never been anything but harsh. How long are you going to be a housewife? She had once sneered. What do you mean? I had asked, startled by her sudden hostility. Do not get lazy just because you are pregnant, she snapped. Stop depending on my son and get a job. But Walter wants me to stay home and take care of the family. I had tried to explain. I do not want to hear excuses. From now on, you will manage both childcare and work. Do I make myself clear? There had never been warmth in her tone. We had never gotten along, and I knew I could not rely on her now. With nowhere else to go, I stepped inside my home, only to find it empty. The crib, the baby supplies, the furniture I had lovingly prepared for my daughter, gone. All that remained were a few of my personal belongings and a stack of divorce papers lying in the middle of the floor. My knees gave out. I collapsed right there, unable to hold myself up under the weight of it all. Then my phone rang. My hand shook as I grabbed it, my heart clinging to the last shred of hope. Maybe this was just a bluff. Maybe he had changed his mind. Maybe he was coming home. I picked up immediately. Hello? Where are you? You need to come home. His voice came through, calm and distant. I forgot to mention, I sold the house. You need to be out by tomorrow. A chill ran through me. You are lying, I whispered. Where are we supposed to go? You want your own daughter to be homeless? Not my problem. he said flatly. Tears burned my eyes as I clutched the phone tighter. How could you do this? Why are you doing this? His voice turned even colder. Did you even look in a mirror while you were pregnant? You were so pale every day. I felt like I was living with a ghost. My stomach twisted. I married you because you were a woman who listened to me, did what I said, he continued. But now, I regret it. His words felt like a slap. I am divorcing you because I am tired of your introverted, weak personality. That is all. You cannot just throw me and our baby away because you feel like it. I shot back. You are being selfish. I have nothing more to say to you, he said with finality. Get your stuff and get out of that house. Goodbye. The line went dead. For the first time since meeting my husband, I felt something stronger than sadness. Hatred. But all the anger in the world would not change the reality of my situation. I was exhausted, but I had no choice but to move forward. My daughter needed diapers, formula, things I no longer had because everything had been taken from me. I bundled her up and stepped out into the cold, my mind too numb to process what had just happened. But as I walked, my daughter, who had been sleeping peacefully, suddenly started wailing. No matter how much I tried to soothe her, she would not stop. She must have sensed it, my fear, my helplessness. I sank onto a bench in the park, cradling her in my arms, trying to calm her down when a voice interrupted. You cannot just take a newborn outside like this. Do you have any idea how irresponsible that is? I turned my head, startled. It was my mother-in-law. I braced myself for another harsh lecture, but before I could say anything, she stepped closer, eyes narrowing at my tear-streaked face. You are a mother now, she scolded. How do you plan to take responsibility if something happens to that baby? She knew. She must have come to my house expecting to see us there, only to find it empty. She must have followed the sound of my daughter's cries and found me here, alone. I expected her usual coldness, but instead she sighed and, to my shock, placed a warm hand on my back. I broke down completely. Between sobs, I finally told her everything. Walter had abandoned us. He had sold the house. I had nowhere to go. She listened without interrupting, her face unreadable. Then, to my surprise, she said, If you have nowhere else to go, come stay with me. I looked at her, confused. But it is fine, she said, cutting me off. Come on, let us go. You need a roof over your head. I hesitated. This woman had never been kind to me before. But in that moment, I had no other choice. I followed her home, carrying my daughter close, still unsure if I could truly trust her. Then, as soon as we stepped inside, she turned to me with an expression I had never seen before. Let us live together, she said. I stared at her. What? You have nowhere else to go, do you? Are you really planning to be homeless with a baby? She did not wait for my answer. You will be safe here. You will have food, shelter. That is all that matters right now. For the first time in days, I felt something close to relief. Maybe I was not completely alone after all. My mother-in-law sat across from me, her expression unreadable. Your father-in-law never wanted to give up his comfortable life, she admitted. He did not want me to divorce him, so he changed his ways and became obedient. That is what you see now. A man who is fine. I was still digesting her words when she suddenly turned serious. But Walter deciding to divorce you out of nowhere, it makes me why I hesitated. That was when we decided on a plan. The next day, my mother-in-law made a call to her husband, putting our strategy into action. Did you hear? Walter divorced his wife, she said casually. To my surprise, my father-in-law responded without hesitation. She already told you? Good. It is about time. Honestly, it is the best decision he could have made. What are you talking about? My mother-in-law asked, playing along. I feel great, my father-in-law said with a chuckle. Now he can find a younger, prettier woman and move on. I know, right? Walter's voice came through the speaker, smug and arrogant. I do not want to see her miserable face ever again. She is probably living under a bridge somewhere by now. I clenched my fists as I listened, seething with anger. He had no idea I was there, hearing every word. But he was in for a rude awakening. Actually, there is someone I would like you to meet, my mother-in-law continued. Oh, you have already found someone for him. Well, yes, she said smoothly. And I am going to give you $1 million as a gift when they get married. My father-in-law let out a whistle of approval. Really? Of course, my mother-in-law said. But in return, you need to introduce me to Walter's new partner. And tell him not to rush into marriage just yet, all right? All right, Walter agreed eagerly. I will bring her to the house in a month. Just have that money ready for me. He had no idea he had just walked into a trap. My mother-in-law and I exchanged a triumphant glance. Over the next month, I made my preparations in secret. When the day arrived, Walter showed up at my in-laws' house, looking like the happiest man alive. By his side was a young woman with heavy makeup, wearing a confident smirk. I opened the door with purpose, standing tall. Welcome, I said. Walter's face went pale. What? Why are you here? The woman beside him blinked in confusion, looking between us. Ignoring their shock, my mother-in-law motioned them inside. Overwhelmed by the pressure of the moment, they followed her into the living room. Walter turned to his mother. What is going on? She gave him a knowing look. Well, Nora, shall we begin? Without hesitation, I laid out a stack of photographs on the table, clear evidence of Walter sneaking into hotels with a woman next to him. Alongside them was a full report, detailing his movements for the past month. I am claiming alimony, I stated firmly. With this much proof, you have no way out of it. You had better start preparing yourself. Walter's smug expression vanished. Wait a minute, where did you get all this? My mother-in-law folded her arms. I hired a private investigator. If you are going to expose a cheater, it is best to leave it to the professionals. Walter turned to her in horror. Mother, why are you siding with her? Because I am not a fool, she shot back. Why would I support a man who abandoned his wife and child just to chase after some younger woman? And what about the $1 million? Walter blurted out, his voice rising in panic. Oh, that was a lie, my mother-in-law said smoothly. I just needed to stall you from rushing into marriage. You tricked me? Walter's face turned red with fury, while the woman beside him clenched her fists. She looked as if she had been expecting an entirely different outcome. Then Walter had the audacity to say something that made my blood run cold. We are already divorced. You cannot claim alimony now. The woman beside him nodded smugly. That is right. You cannot accuse someone of cheating if the marriage is over. I let out a slow breath, then smirked. You are wrong, I said, pulling out another document. Walter frowned. What is that? Our marriage certificate, I said, sliding it across the table. Walter's face drained of color. I thought I had lost that. How do you have it? It was stacked under the divorce papers you left behind, I said. You were careless. We are still legally married, which means your affair is undeniable. Walter's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. The woman, on the other hand, seemed unfazed. She leaned back and smirked. Whatever. At least we will be rid of you. Walter is rich. He can pay you whatever you want. I narrowed my eyes. Rich, I scoffed. Who told you that? She flipped her hair. Walter did, obviously. He told me he has money to spare. I shook my head, laughing under my breath. I hate to break it to you, but Walter is not rich. His take-home pay is barely $1,800 a month. That is below average for his age. Her smug expression evaporated. What? She shrieked. Walter sat frozen, unable to deny it. The woman turned to him, livid. Wait, you lied to me? Walter stammered, unable to form a coherent response. Her face twisted with rage. Forget it. I am canceling our engagement. I have no use for a broke man. Walter's eyes widened in terror. No, wait. Please do not leave me. He dropped to his knees, grabbing at her hands like a desperate fool. I had never seen him look so pathetic. I had seen enough. That is enough, I said sharply. If you want to keep fighting, do it somewhere else. Get out of here. Now! Both of them jumped at the sound of my voice. For a long moment, the room was silent. Then my mother-in-law finally spoke. Walter, she said coldly, you are no longer my son. Walter's head snapped up. Mother, what are you saying? I am saying I am cutting ties with you, she said firmly. Take that woman and leave. Do not ever come back. Walter stared at her, dumbfounded. I placed a written contract in front of him. You will pay alimony and child support. Sign it. He had no choice. With trembling hands, he signed. I filed the divorce papers that very day. Walter's downfall came swiftly. His mistress dumped him. To impress her, he had taken out loans and racked up debt. When the collection calls reached his company, he was fired. Now, he works menial labor to pay off over $200,000 in debt. Meanwhile, I received my full alimony settlement, and even Walter's mistress had to pay restitution for her role in the affair. As for me, I am thriving. My relationship with my mother-in-law has never been better. She offered me a place in her home, and I accepted. Together, we raised my daughter in a loving, stable environment. I have returned to work, and though balancing my career and being a mother is a challenge, I feel stronger than ever. Maybe it took losing everything to realize just how much I was capable of. One thing is for sure, my daughter, and I will never live under the shadow of a man like Walter again.